Welcome back to Football Daily on deadline day. Just 30 minutes left of the window and Ornstein has dropped an Orn bomb. Fabrizio has given it the here we go. Enzo Fernandez, €120 million deal, agreed. There is a race to get the paperwork over the line in what is 25 minutes left of this window. 8.5-year deal seems to have been agreed in what is a British record transfer. Now, we already spoke and gave you some details about this earlier in a video. So we are now going to have a little debate about whether or not £105 million Enzo Fernandez does indeed get Chelsea top four this season. Does anybody want to kick us off, gentlemen?
I don't mind taking the floor. I mean, it's tough, isn't it? 10 points off Man United in fourth with 18 games to go of the season. Yeah, it's a big ask, isn't it? It's a huge, huge ask. Realistically, no, I don't think Enzo Fernandez on his own can do that. But I do think Chelsea's January business, record-breaking as well, there is enough in there that they could make up serious ground, I think, in the second half of the season. Badiashile, an amazing signing, I think, at left centre back. He's already improved that defence, hasn't he? 2 clean sheets in their last 2 games in the Premier League. I can't remember the last time they did that, or even if they've done that at all this season. I know it's against a pretty poor Palace side at the moment, and a Liverpool side who are pretty poor as well. But you've got to start somewhere with that. Mykhailo Mudryk looked really exciting, didn't he, off the bench against Liverpool? I think he's going to be a certified starter on the left, given his transfer fee. And Enzo, if he can come in and make the kind of significant difference that we've said that he can do, especially given that he'll be kind of coming into a role that was previously played by Jorginho. He offers so much more dynamism and tenacity in that role. Then Chelsea have already kind of constructed, I don't know, I think they've upgraded in a number of positions already. And, we've spoken a lot about, what this does to the dressing room, to players who are going to miss out on game time, players on big contracts, players on big wages. That I think, is something we've spoken about a lot. But when it comes down to pure squad building and pure squad strength, Chelsea definitely have what it takes to rise up the table now. You've got, the likes of Brentford, Fulham and Brighton ahead of them. I really rate Brighton. I think Brentford and Fulham have had great seasons, but they are very much catchable. I think Chelsea will probably finish the season above those guys. And then they've got to hope that Spurs or Man United slip up, or even Newcastle. And that's, I don't think, is out of the realms of possibility either. Obviously, we've seen Christian Eriksen ruled out for the season for Man United. I know Sabitz is coming. I know Sabitz is coming. But, these are not teams who have the masses of strength and depth. They don't have the depth that Chelsea have.
Nobody does at this
stage. I mean,
it
is certainly possible. And Graham Potter, we're big fans of him on this channel. He's had a tough start to life at Chelsea. But, is it possible? Yes, I think so. Would it be,
you seem to have talked yourself back round to a yes there, Mike. You started with a no, and now you're at a yes.
I think it's possible, but, do I think it's going to happen? No, I wouldn't bet on it. But, stranger things have happened in the Premier League. We were talking off camera before. Do you remember Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's first full season in charge when United were about 11th, when Bruno Fernandes came through the door? They rose up to 3rd, I believe, that season. Yeah. So it's not out of the realms of possibility.
What are you saying?
I think the scenario in itself is flawed. In isolation, when you're recruiting a £120 million player, you'd imagine that he is just, coming into a side that, perhaps isn't in transition, is going to be the cherry on top, will be afforded time to bed into the squad. But Chelsea are experiencing a lot of tumult right now, and they're rebuilding not just the spine of their team, but every facet of their team. So it's not just about his ability, it's about the alchemy of the side at this point, isn't it? It's about how well these tremendous players blend with one another, which very, very rarely happens instantaneously. So, yes, like I said, in isolation, bringing in players of that calibre should put you in the fray for a top 4 finish. João Felix, Enzo Fernandez. I mean, they've managed to get rid of a couple of players in the form of Ziyech and Jorginho as well. We'll come on to that in good time. With Kante returning from injury, you're looking at a midfield of Kante, Kovacic, Enzo Fernandez. All of a sudden, that is looking really tasty in an area where they've been weak at the start of the campaign. We've seen Dennis Zakaria step into reasonable effect and then fall victim to injury. They've just not really had any consistency in the middle of the park. He's got that physicality. He's been fit, available, effective for Benfica, but we are talking about a guy who's got 17 league games under his belt in a top European league. So to put those expectations on him, wholly unreasonable. My summary is Potter has the parts now. He has the parts, but bringing them together is going to be no mean feat. So I think they don't get top 4 off the back of this, but a top 6 finish where there's steady progress is made and we start to see a clearer picture of how we want Chelsea to play come the end of the season. Great. Because, lest we forget, they're also have a very young defence as well.
Plus Thiago Silva.
Well, in terms of players coming in, they're having to blood really young defenders. And that never amounts to a top 4 finish. Well, very rarely amounts to a top 4 finish. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But let's have the debate some more. What do you think?
I agree with you two. I think no. I don't think they get top 4 from this position. I think, yes, they're 10 points off it, but they've got to usurp 6 teams in front of them. They're 10 points behind, but they've got to expect, 6 or 7 teams to drop 10 points and them to gain 10 points in that same location, I think is really, really difficult. I think they have had an outstanding window. Elite of the elite, maybe the best January window I've ever seen a football team have. They've covered nearly every role possible they needed to, other than potentially getting a striker through the door. I've never seen money spent like it in a January window, to be honest with you. What is it, over £600 million across 2 windows now? They are going hell to leather, aren't they, to try and get into this top 4. And, they couldn't really have done any more. They've maxed out what they can actually do in the transfer market in this window. Now it's on Graham Potter to put those pieces together. And like I said in the last video, he has now got huge pressure on his shoulders because this is an outstanding young squad. There are very, very few holes in this squad. Maybe you can argue a number 9. Maybe you could say they need a goalkeeper eventually. But Kepa, when you look at his post-shot expected goals, I think he's been the outstanding goalkeeper in the Prem alongside Alisson this season. And Nick Pope has also been amazing as well. But there's very few holes. He has to get a system that works. He has to get the best out of talents like Enzo Fernandez, Mykhailo Mudryk very, very quickly, because bringing in €200 million worth of talent in 2 positions, they simply have to work. There is no...
I think in some way,
buts and maybes around
the fees and the amount that they've spent is so farcical. I think it's got to a point where Chelsea spending an extra £130 million, for me, doesn't raise expectations on Graham Potter. Like, it's already hilarious the amount of money they've spent. They've almost broke the British transfer record for money going out in a winter window by themselves. So I don't think Potter will be looking at this £130 million asset coming through the door thinking, well, now we're going to have to push on. I think I think it'll just...
He doesn't have any excuses to do. There's no excuses there at all.
And with Manchester United, it's going to be difficult, isn't it? Because I'm looking at the rest of the league now, and it's not just about what Chelsea do from now until the end of the season, isn't it? It's if Bruno Guimaraes gets injured at Newcastle and their midfield falls apart, maybe they can regain some ground on them. If Casemiro falls victim to injury, obviously we've seen it happen with Christian Eriksen, then maybe they regain ground on Manchester United. Like the teams ahead of them are obviously in a stronger position, in the ascendancy, but still vulnerable in key areas of the pitch. I mean, Liverpool have got a game on them. Do we see Tottenham surrendering 7 points between now and the end of the season in terms of going toe to toe with Chelsea, fixture to fixture? That's going to be a difficult one, isn't it? I do think the aim now is top 6, which sounds bizarre given the talent they have. But yeah, I think this throws up some interesting questions for the summer as well, especially when it comes to central midfielders, because Declan Rice's name was obviously bandied about a few times for that, to become the heartbeat of that Chelsea midfield. They've obviously gone to Enzo Fernandez, which begs the question, where does Declan Rice go in the summer? Jude Bellingham. I think we've long held the opinion that Liverpool would have been counting the pennies because they want to move for him in a really meaningful way in the summer. And now Enzo's off the market. Chelsea are probably not going to spend again like that in the summer, but who knows?
They probably will, yeah.
Yeah, where do those players go? That's pretty interesting, isn't it? Frankie de Jong, do Barcelona have to get his wages off the books in order to move forward as a club? I think other clubs will be looking at the Enzo Fernandez transfer thinking this isn't exactly bad news for us when it comes to the summer window.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I agree with you a bit, Chris, in terms of I think this January window is more of a vote of confidence in Graham Potter from Todd Burley rather than something designed to
a test.
Pressure. I think it's a vote of confidence in him. He'd have to fail really spectacularly, I think, to lose his job before next season.
Agreed.
I think next season is going to be what it's all about. But I think it does. Yeah, like you say, I think. Yeah, I don't know. I can't see Chelsea spending another 100 million on a central midfielder. It feels unlikely to me.
Even if Kante leaves? The contract's still not been agreed there. They would then just be left with who? Kovacic, who's injured perennially, and Enzo.
We're now at a point when you can never say never with Chelsea.
Yeah, it's true.
There's no
it's
point
true,
in
but
guessing.
it just I don't know. I don't know how they would be able to justify it, especially with FIFA's kind of ruling coming in from the summer, right, in terms of not being able to tie players down or not to be able to amortise transfers over 5 years. Which they've obviously managed to do with Enzo with this 8.5-year deal just before they're not able to. But onto that, though, I think, interestingly, I think the Enzo Fernandez fee is probably as high as it is because of the kind of asking prices we've seen put on Declan Rice, on Jude Bellingham over the last 12 months, as well as stuff like Mudryk, stuff like Antony, in terms of like players coming into the Premier League. But yeah, I think Arsenal fans will be really buoyed by this. I think the signs of Rice to Arsenal only seem to be getting stronger in terms of Arsenal's
stopgap with Jorginho.
Well, in terms of Arsenal's kind of seeming commitment to make him their number one target. He's obviously been linked with Man United in the past, but I think reports seem to suggest that he's pretty set on staying in London, or that would be his preference. And I think Chelsea's always been his dream. But I think from a career perspective, if you're Declan Rice right now, and you've got the choice of Arsenal, who are really on an upward trajectory, probably going to win the Premier League this season, or at least favourites to at this point, or go to a Chelsea side which is still working itself out. I don't know.
He does obviously have that emotional attachment to Chelsea, which is
of course. But
I would pick
Arsenal right now.
I think you would, wouldn't you? I just think there's more of a spot for him in this Arsenal team, or at least you can see where you can thrive in this Arsenal team easier, essentially being Xhaka's long-term replacement.
But what does that mean for Moises Caicedo then? Because they've bid £80 million supposedly, or £70 million for Moises Caicedo. They've got him for him twice, Arsenal. Do you see them? I personally don't see a world in which they go for both of them.
I don't know if they go for both of them, but I think they probably didn't go for Rice this January because they knew they couldn't get him out of West Ham, and they thought maybe if we can get Caicedo sorted, we can basically cross that bridge when we come to it. I think Declan Rice is just only available in the summer, isn't he?
Yeah, no way
West Ham Arsenal's willingness or lack of to go over the 65-70 million pound threshold, I think that was just a classic case of opportunism, or if the opportunity beckoned, they would go for it, probably acknowledging it was already somewhat of an overpay, but their discipline with that transfer would intimate that their thinking might change if it didn't materialise. So we either get Caicedo now for 60 and it really reinforces our bid for the title, or we rethink, we go more pragmatic. Jorginho, we rethink in the summer. Because if they'd really, really wanted him, they'd have gone to 70, 80. Like what I've seen Chelsea, they were with Enzo Fernandez, it maybe would have mirrored that to and fro in. But
whilst we're on the topic of midfielders, I do want to just touch on Liverpool because, Liverpool fans at home will be watching this thinking we've been desperate for a midfielder. They were extremely keen as a fan base to get Enzo Fernandez over the line, weren't they? Enzo Fernandez has now gone to Liverpool. Arsenal seem to be getting Declan Rice. Arsenal are in for Caicedo. Jude Bellingham looks increasingly likely to go to one of Manchester City or Real Madrid. Frankie de
I always
Jong
forget about Manchester City.
Doesn't seem likely to leave Barcelona now. He seems to have fallen back in love with the club and is much more in favour under Xavi. Where does this leave Liverpool? Because I feel like Liverpool are, more than any of these teams, in need of midfield surgery. Arsenal still have Partey and Xhaka at their best, don't they, at the moment anyway? Manchester City still have Rodri. They've got Phillips in that deep role. I look at the Liverpool team, I think, gosh, this needs probably at least 2 central midfielders in here. And I don't see them as the favourite for any of those players, really, right now on paper. And that would concern me as a Liverpool fan, especially when, it's not a major move and it was just a loan, but a player like Marcel Sabitzer goes to Manchester United. I think he would have immediately come in and improved that Liverpool midfield in that Jordan Henderson role on the right-hand side where they're currently struggling to occupy and fill. So I would be very irritated in 13 minutes if I was a Liverpool fan on the hand side of midfield of this window.
They've missed out on quite a few what would have been pragmatic stopgaps. When they missed out on Tchouaméni, we were saying maybe they should go for Konrad Laimer. Like, he might keep them ticking over until they make their next big move for Bellingham. We know that he's obviously gone to Bayern now and very willing to be a backup option there. They've obviously done the same thing with Sabitzer, which does lead me to believe that they are going to be in big for someone in the summer, whether that is Bellingham. I'm not sure. I know. Who are the other candidates? Maybe it is a Declan Rice. Like, his skill set that would endear him to someone like Jurgen Klopp, wouldn't it? Like, with just his physicality, I think he's pretty elite, pretty leading in his position. I quite liked, Gravenberch for Liverpool. It fast became clear that Bayern weren't willing to loan him out. Obviously, we know now that's because they were willing to let Sabitzer leave. So I think with Liverpool, they've got enough personnel to keep them ticking over. It's just they haven't got that profile that they desperately need at current. And that's not to say that Fabinho can't regain some form or Henderson's minutes can't. I mean, they're being managed right now, or that he won't, come into a little bit of form after being in and out of the side. So I don't think they need to panic, but I know that Liverpool fans will be, fairly distraught.
Yeah, I think they have been focusing on the wrong areas though. They got that Cody Gakpo deal done end of December, and is the forward line really where they needed to invest more in at this moment? Like Jota and Firmino coming back soon. I guess Artur was a kind of bit of a stopgap at the end of last summer.
Naby Keita's looked okay when he's come back into the side, but obviously his fitness can't be trusted. They've got Oxlade-Chamberlain as well.
Contract.
But I know. That's what I'm saying. I think they want to reassess in the summer, and anything now would feel a little bit knee-jerk after not getting Tchouaméni. But I don't. If they've not got the finances to move, for someone like Caicedo, what are they going to do? Where are they going to turn?
That's what I mean.
A lot of sympathy for FSG,
or somebody in that sort of mould. Right, we've got 10 minutes left of the stream, so should we move away from Enzo, because we're going to have spoken about him to death. Maybe we'll move into some other transfers we like, or other transfers we want to talk about. Is there any other names you want to speak about, either of you two want to put forward?
Ziyech to PSG, pretty interesting. Just to come off the back of Chelsea news with Jorginho obviously going to Arsenal as well. Ziyech, I think, far too good a player to be, rotting on the bench. Only 4 league starts for him this season. Only 14 league starts last season, so it's not long overdue. But where does he play for PSG is a legitimate question. Yeah, I think he just wanted to get out of London, but it might be like out of the frying pan and into the fire sort of territory when it comes to minutes. I don't know what you pair think of that. I mean, Jorginho, we went on the stream earlier when the boys were discussing it, so maybe worth sort of pitching in with our opinion.
Don't mind Jorginho at all. I think it's been massively overplayed in Arsenal Twitter. I don't think it's a direct replacement for Partey, because I don't think he has the speed or the defensive capabilities of Thomas Partey, which is, superb intelligence to cover an awful lot of ground in Arsenal's midfield. That's not what he's going to be brought in for. But, in games where they're going to dominate the ball, and they do dominate the ball, Arsenal, he is fantastic in possession, a fantastic line breaker, will be absolutely fine as cover, and at 13 mil, an 18-month contract, with that experience he's had from winning multiple trophies, I think it's a good signing. I think it's a good signing.
Yeah. I mean, it's not on the, some Arsenal fans were pretty sceptical about Leandro Trossard as well when he came in. Not to the same level, but again, it's they didn't get their top target, and they had to go for someone. And there's a title on the line here, and squad depth is a massive, plays a key role in any title run-in. And yeah, I also really like. I mean, it's not a deadline day transfer, but I really liked that Trossard move. And when he came on against Man United, he made a big difference. Was involved in that winning goal. And I think Jorginho may not get the same amount of game time. He may be mainly used in the Europa League. But when you've got 1 day of the transfer window left, and there are limited options out there, I don't think he's the worst one. Yes, an overspend on a player whose contract runs out in the summer, but
not a massive one though, is it?
Not like it's not really touching the sides of them. I quite like Sasa Lukic to Fulham from Torino. Kind of going away from the top six. Obviously, Fulham, making a play for European football this year. He's been a really solid player for Torino over the last few years. Was stripped of the captaincy at the start of this season over a contract dispute, but was playing in a really high pressing Torino side. So I think physically he'll probably be a decent match in the Premier League, and probably quite a good partner for Palhinha as well.
Well, they've clearly turned to him after the whole Sander Berge situation didn't materialise, and he feels like a good deputy in that instance, because they're obviously looking for someone to act as a Harrison Reed upgrade, let's say, or maybe someone that they could use in a 3. Obviously played a lot of 4-2-3-1, but conceding an awful lot of shots this season, aren't they, Fulham? So someone that makes them a little bit more stoic in midfield, and Lukic appears to be that guy.
Quite versatile too.
It's interesting that they didn't sign Berge, who was also linked with Liverpool. I mean, just to hark back to Liverpool very, very quickly, but they quickly found a plan B. And we were on Winners and Losers a couple of weeks ago, and we were reeling off some plan Bs for Liverpool. I've already mentioned Conrad Laimer, but we haven't spoke about Tielemans. I know that he's become sort of Leicester would rather lose him for nothing in the summer than give him up at this point, given their precarious situation. So, signing him has become very difficult, when at the start of the window it seemed quite achievable. Give Leicester 20 mil, they're going to spend that elsewhere, but obviously weren't given the time. I also suggested Adrien Rabiot. I thought he would be quite a pragmatic fix, but the fact they've when Liverpool haven't got their primary targets, they've not been willing to spend 20, 30 or even less, like with Sabitzer or whatever, or facilitate a loan on a plan B, again leads me to think they are going to spend big, or they are going to be ambitious in the summer. But yeah, I think that the Lukic is an interesting one. But it's really like nimble wheeling and dealing from Fulham. We didn't get Berge. Here's someone that profiles the same. Here's someone that can chip him with goals from midfield. I like it. I think he got 9 goals and assists last season, despite being like a DM/CM, right?
Yeah. While we're on the topic of our favourite transfers, one of mine has just been announced. Pedro Porro, officially a Tottenham player, a player that I think is going to take Tottenham to the top 4. I think he is that good.
I think this is Joe's punchiest shout, by the way.
I think he gets Tottenham top 4. I think the biggest problem in this Tottenham side is creativity outside of Kane. I think Pedro Porro is a specialist creator, especially on that right wing back role. They've managed to get rid of Matt Doherty by terminating his contract and allow him to go to Atletico. I think the reason they had to do that was because they already had 8 players out on loan, and there's only a limit of how many players you can have out on loan now. So they've terminated his contract. He's gone to Atleti. Of course, we've seen Jed Spence go to Stade Rennes as well, haven't we? Which is a fun little move. So they've now got Pedro Porro and Emerson Royal, much better in terms of right-back options. I think he is absolutely exceptional. We still have the worries in the long term. How's Conte gonna stay? Is he gonna leave? What's the contract situation? What's the next coach gonna want from his fullbacks? But nevertheless, you are signing a 23-year-old, so good age, a fantastic wing-back profile in terms of attacking output, exactly what Conte wants, and somebody who he can clearly develop, or feels he can clearly develop, as more of a defender as well, because his defensive output hasn't classically been amazing under Ruben Amorim, but Ruben Amorim hasn't asked him to do loads of defending. I think Conte will probably improve that from him. So I think this is a genuinely sensational signing. I think Spurs fans should be really, really excited. And at 45 million euros, given how crazy the market is this January, I really don't think that's that bad of a fee. I think it's very, very difficult to get players out of Portugal, as Chelsea have found out. And 45 million euros, I think, in a couple of seasons' time, could look like good business.
Yeah, in January as well. Like, he's one of the top young top young wing-backs in Europe.
Definitely.
And I'm not actually too concerned about the Conte situation, because when you think about who would be the prime candidates to take over from Conte, it would probably be Mauricio Pochettino and Thomas Tuchel, both of whom have been able to utilise a back three wing-back system very well in the last few years. And I think any manager who comes in, when he looks at someone like Porro, at least if he does become one of Tottenham's prime creators that he'd be expected to do, and is a decent goal threat himself as well, I think he should become one of the cornerstones of that side, especially a side that is eventually looking to transition away from being over-reliant on someone like Heung-min Son, who's had a quiet season, hasn't he? I think that right-hand side now looks really, really exciting with Kulusevski. I'm really excited to see how they link up. Pedro Porro as well, like someone who's, I don't know, I'm just quite happy for the player as well, because I think he's been threatening to really break through, and sign for an elite club for a number of years now. I remember that first year at Girona, he was just absolutely sensational, and that was quite a while ago. He was 19 then. He's like 23 now. I think he's got a big move at the right time.
Yeah. All right, we've got 5 minutes left. Any more names you want to throw in these last 5 minutes in terms of moves that have excited you on deadline day? Maybe teams that have a little bit surprising amount of business they've done. Obviously, Southampton tonight going out of the League Cup 3-1 on aggregate to Newcastle, but they have got, or seemingly, got a couple of players through the door quite late in the window. We spoke about them earlier, though, didn't we, on our relegation battling sides. If you haven't watched that video already, do go and give that a watch.
What about Lokonga to Palace? We've not discussed that
yet. We haven't discussed that. That's quite an interesting one, isn't it? And I don't mind that move either. I think that Arsenal obviously don't feel he's quite ready to have an impact in that first team, and I think that's probably been proved true in him trying to fill in for Thomas Partey in recent weeks. I don't think he's quite got the nous to play in that position, but it was quite telling when Martin Odegaard turned round and had an absolute screaming match at him against Manchester City away from home when he wasn't stood in the right position. If your captain's doing that, I think he probably tells you you're not in the right position to start with. So I think it's a good move. He's not going to be a guaranteed star at Palace, but Patrick Vieira has shown a nous of developing young players, and playing alongside a player like Cheick Doucouré in midfield, I think it's very exciting if you're a Palace fan and if you're Sammy Lokonga.
Yeah, my biggest criticism of him is that the game seems to pass him by when he's off the ball. And I think that his defensive numbers support that gut feeling. And there is personnel at Crystal Palace. You've mentioned Doucouré. Even Jeff Schlupp off the ball has improved tremendously in recent seasons. Conor Gallagher obviously had some of the highest. I mean, not sure that was as a result of system and just his skill set, but some of the highest defensive pressures last season, tackles, interceptions for midfielders, so on and so forth. But yeah, he's going to see less of the ball and have to work harder off of it, and that education might be informative for him if he's to have any sort of Arsenal career. Because it does feel like he's been given a couple of chances. He's really not excelled in cup competitions. And it's like, if you don't show some growth during this loan spell, we're probably going to flip you or sell you for what we bought you for. So, yeah, that's how I feel about it anyway.
It's quite exciting if you're a Palace fan as well. I think they need a midfield cover, and they've got 2 players in on deadline there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially given that they are falling into a relegation battle now. 4 weeks ago I wouldn't have thought that, but their recent form has been really poor, and I think in particular in midfield they've been ceding a lot of ground, haven't they? Whereas look at last season, they were, I think, one of the most functional teams in the division. I think they needed to get midfield signings in. I also think Nottingham Forest. I know we could. I can't even know.
Do another 40-minute
how many players they've signed now this season. But I mean, to get Keylor Navas in is such a coup. As is Felipe from Atletico Madrid. I know Felipe I think his performances have declined for Atleti over the last couple of years, but he brings a lot of experience. But I think Keylor Navas, even if it is very short term with Dean Henderson out,
I know,
till
2 weeks.
Yeah,
3 weeks he's out. I
mean, he is, I think, on his day, still one of the best goalkeepers in the world. So, I mean, if you can get him in, that gives you a pretty good chance of consolidating your place in mid-table, as Nottingham Forest are trying to do now after their kind of recent good form.
Yeah, the English Super League is kicking off in a big way. I think there'll be a lot of other clubs and a lot of other leagues looking very enviously, even at relegation level sides, who are able to sign, some of the best talent across Europe. You're looking at Southampton, picking up Sulemana and stuff, and they're bottom of the league.
Who we discussed pretty extensively in the video prior to this, right, when we talked about transfers that could potentially save your club season. So if you do have an appetite, for hearing more about Sulemana, go and check that out. Maybe worth mentioning Leicester before we wrap up as well. Just trying to think of some other players we potentially haven't touched upon. Tete looks like a decent acquisition. Obviously, getting rid of Ayoze Perez would have been top of my list if I was Brendan Rodgers. Like, reinforcements down that right-hand side, very, very necessary. Ayoze Perez was splitting minutes with Mark Albrighton, 33, 34-year-old Mark Albrighton, who, bless him, his, very diligent defensively, but zero ball progression, zero attacking output this season. Leicester's side has just looked really unbalanced as a result. Castagne's struggled down that right-hand side. Tielemans often has to drop in. So, used the word alchemy earlier in the stream. Hopefully, just by having some more physicality on that right-hand side, Leicester will just be a more balanced outfit. And if we're talking relegation, Leicester, Leeds, still not, still within reach, aren't they? Of the sides down there. So they have to get their act together pretty quickly, and I think some of those acquisitions will help. I mean, I know nothing about Christensen, who was 14 million euros. I think the second biggest acquisition of the window after Wout Weiss in the summer, second biggest acquisition this season, I should say. But yeah, let's see how that one turns out. Tete, you had a look at his numbers earlier. Said it was pretty good.
I think pretty exciting. Good output this season anyway for Leon. But either way, the English transfer window has now slammed shut. I think Man United have just got the deal sheet through the door for Sabitzer, so that looks like that one's going to happen.
Happy?
Very happy with Sabitzer as a backup to Christian Eriksen. And it also seems as though Chelsea have got the Enzo Fernandez deal over the line just about. But we want to hear from you guys at home. What was your favourite move of this deadline day? Please stay tuned tomorrow, where I'll be ranking each Premier League club's transfer window from elite to shambolic. That'll be going live in the afternoon. Make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe as well if you're new to the channel. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. We'll see you later. Bye.